bring some inhibitors into this game, into this love story. Who's going to be the inhibitor? That's me. So now, a competitive inhibitor always binds at the substrate binding site. So now I come up to my enzyme. Now I'm going to bind at the substrate binding site. And I ask her, do you remember Miguel? She's going to be like, Miguel who? Why? Because her Miguel is lost. She's totally distracted now. Because I've now bound at her substrate binding site.
She wants it from the
So
back.
Miguel is out of the picture. So therefore, this is what happens. With competitive inhibitors, since they bind at the substrate binding site, the enzyme's affinity for the substrate will be reduced. Remember I said it's always an inverse relationship between Km and affinity. And I said, originally, whichever one is low, the other one's going to be high. So if I just said that the affinity for Miguel is going to be down, what's going to happen to my Km? It's going to go up. Now look at your notes. It says Km is increased with a competitive inhibitor on page number 6. Okay, and I'll show it to you guys over here. So with a competitive inhibitor, cause an increase in the Km. The speed at which our enzyme works is not affected. The enzyme is still working like normal, so therefore that's why there's no change in the maximum velocity of the enzyme. So again, a competitive inhibitor comes in and binds at the substrate binding site. So now I ask, do you remember Miguel? No, who's Miguel? I don't know Miguel. Why? Because the enzyme's affinity for our substrate is reduced. And it's an inverse relationship, so if it's reduced, that means my Km has to go up. Now let's talk about the opposite scenario, a non-competitive inhibitor. A non-competitive inhibitor can bind anywhere except the substrate binding site. So non-competitive inhibitors will bind anywhere else other than the substrate binding site. So let's say, hypothetically, I bind in the back. So now, I bind it, forget about it. Now, she sees Miguel and says, hey Miguel, let's go. Now, Miguel says, right on. And Miguel comes in to bind.
That was the Eiffel Tower.
Okay? I'm making it harder for her to get to Miguel. Another way to think of it is this. Miguel, let's have you on the other side of the room for a second. And let's have you face over here. Now, there's our substrate, Miguel. Here's our enzyme. They see each other across the room. That tingle occurs, that twinkle occurs in their eye. Then you get the little butterflies.
The twinkle in your eye.
Okay? So therefore,
oh, so nice.
I'm the non-competitive inhibitor. I'm binding anywhere else other than the substrate binding site. So, substrate binding site is open for Miguel. But now I say, okay, I want you to move towards Miguel. Okay, but I'm holding her down. I'm making it harder for her to go. She's moving slower. She'll eventually get there, but it's a lot slower. Did her affinity change for Miguel? No, she wants to get there.
She wants to.
Oh, yeah.
She wants to, yo. She want to hit that.
But her speed,
she wants to bind from the
slower.
back.
That's why if you look there for non-competitive inhibitors, they don't affect the Km, meaning they don't affect the affinity that the enzyme has towards the substrate, but they cause a decrease in the Vmax. Why? Because that enzyme cannot move as fast.
She wants to do
this way. The non-competitive inhibitor is weighing it